Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 12 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has reached an absolute flashpoint. Today marks the official expiration of the 14-day ceasefire between the United States and Iran, and the prospects for an extension appear increasingly bleak. Overnight, President Donald Trump signaled that the United States is prepared to resume military action, accusing Tehran of multiple ceasefire violations and stating he has little interest in extending the truce without a definitive agreement. This hardening stance is mirrored by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, whose senior commanders have issued a chilling warning that the region's entire oil industry will be targeted if conflict resumes and neighboring states allow the United States to utilize their territory for attacks. As the deadline looms, the international community is watching with bated breath, noting that while some domestic flights have resumed within Iran, the broader regional airspace remains a theater of extreme tension and uncertainty.
Transitioning from the front lines of potential conflict to the broader global economy, the shadow of war is now being formally quantified by international institutions. The International Monetary Fund, in its April 2026 World Economic Outlook, has officially downgraded its global growth projection to 3.1%. This revision reflects the structural toll of higher commodity prices and the persistent instability of maritime choke points. Economists at the fund warn of a rising defense burden, with military outlays now increasing by an average of 2.7 percentage points of GDP globally, a trend that is contributing to fiscal dominance and threatening to crowd out essential social spending. While the United States and China have shown pockets of resilience, the global narrative is increasingly defined by unevenness, where the strength of exports in some sectors is being undermined by weak domestic demand and the lingering effects of geo-economic fragmentation.
In the realm of finance, all eyes are on the credit markets as they process the implications of this restrictive geopolitical environment. Despite the overarching tensions, there are signs of a divergent reality in the domestic lending markets. For instance, United States weekly mortgage rate averages have continued a modest decline, with the 30-year fixed rate settling at 6.3%. However, this relief for consumers is contrasted by the hawkish undertones of the broader financial sector. Institutional investors are closely monitoring the rising fiscal deficits associated with wartime spending, which the IMF projects could increase public debt by as much as 14 percentage points in conflict-affected economies within 3 years. As corporate earnings reports for the first quarter of 2026 begin to circulate, the market is bracing for a period where net interest margins may broaden, yet the underlying risk of a sudden inflationary spike remains a primary concern for central bankers.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus remains on the high-stakes race for artificial intelligence leadership amidst an uncertain demand environment. Major global technology firms such as HCL Tech have reported resilient fourth-quarter results, with annualized advanced AI revenues now crossing the $620 million mark. This growth is being driven by a surge in demand for AI-led service offerings, even as overall revenue growth remains modest. However, the technology sector is not immune to the geopolitical shocks rippling through the system. Investment in AI infrastructure remains historically strong, but productivity gains are currently arriving too slowly to fully offset the energy and supply chain disruptions caused by the regional instability. Consequently, the industry is moving toward a strategic prioritization of localized hardware production and sovereign AI networks to ensure operational continuity in an increasingly fragmented global market.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are now facing immediate cost escalations. Effective today, major maritime carriers, including Maersk, have implemented emergency inland fuel and energy surcharges across various regions, particularly in the Nordics, citing the ongoing blockage of fuel supplies in the Middle East. These surcharges, reaching as high as 11% in some Baltic states, represent a direct pass through of the increased costs associated with maritime rerouting and energy volatility. As shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remains largely halted, the industry is grappling with the reality of a permanent structural rewiring. Shippers are increasingly abandoning just-in-time models in favor of resilient, high-cost buffer strategies, as they prepare for a prolonged period where the safety of traditional maritime corridors can no longer be guaranteed. That concludes our global briefing for today. Thank you for joining us.